Hello YouTube and welcome back to another book review from me, your host Logan Albright. Today is a little bit weird. It's sort of a hybrid book review and a little chat about history because I want to talk about my favorite president. And I have here, the book that I read this week is The Letters and Writings of Grover Cleveland. Grover Cleveland is my favorite president, and I will tell you why in a minute, but let me just get into this book. This is a Griffin edition leather-bound book, which I always go to this conference called Freedom Fest every year. I didn't go this year, but I go most years. And Griffin Books is always there. They do a lot of kind of classics of liberty, and I always pick up a few volumes there. They have a lot of other stuff too. They have a lot of like psychiatry classics, which I always find interesting, and legal classics and ancient history and all kinds of stuff. And it's a nice publisher, kind of boutique, and they put together these nice leather-bound books. And there's a nice little frontispiece here with the picture of Grover Cleveland. And I wanted to talk about Grover Cleveland because the thing that people know him for, if they do know him at all, is that he was the only non-consecutive president in history. He was the 22nd president, and then he lost his re-election campaign to Benjamin Harrison, and then he was re-elected as the 24th president later. And that's a kind of unique distinction that he has. And there's a chance that after this year, he will no longer have that distinction because we have a possibility of having another non-consecutive president in the United States. And because that is a possibility, I think we should talk about Grover Cleveland and celebrate him now because he's awesome. Now, when people go through the presidents of history and say which ones are good and which ones are bad, historians have a real bias towards presidents who did a lot of big things. They like presidents who prosecuted wars. They like presidents who had big economic policies and programs. They like Lincoln. They like FDR. They like people like that. I think this is a mistake. And this is partially due to my own political philosophy, which, as I've mentioned before on this channel, is libertarian anarchism. I think that the presidents that I like are the ones who are good stewards of the country, who don't completely upend everything, who are responsible with finances, who are adherent to the Constitution, who serve as a check on Congress and the will of the people to make sure they don't go too far. That's what I like in a president. And Grover Cleveland was just such a president. He was the first Democrat to be elected after the Civil War. He was a Bourbon Democrat, which is a special kind of variety of Democrat that's a little bit different than what we know today. He started out as a lawyer born in New Jersey. He became mayor of Buffalo. He became governor of New York, and then he became president. And I'm going to get into the letters in a minute, but let me just say some of the things I like about him. He was regarded as being very honest, having a lot of integrity, and you can read that from the letters. He's very eloquent, and he's very focused on certain things that are a priority to him. He's focused on rooting out corruption in the civil service. He's focused on preserving the value of the dollar by being against tying the dollar to silver as well as to gold, correctly recognizing that if you try to set the price of a dollar on two different commodities that have different prices, one is going to crowd out the other. And that's exactly what happened. People, because silver was worth less than gold, people sold their dollars for gold. They would trade in silver to buy dollars and then trade in the dollars for gold, emptying out the treasury of gold. He's very focused on that. He's very focused on not overtaxing people. He talks about having a budget surplus and how that's unforgivable. He's like, we're taking in more money than we need. We should give that money back to the people. So he's for low taxes. Just an all-around stand-up guy. And in one of the letters, he advises someone not to get into politics. He says, you shouldn't want to get into politics. It's not a noble profession to be in. Like, he started drafted into politics. He's like, I didn't set out to become president or governor or mayor. I was an upstanding citizen, and my people were like, you should be president because they like me. But like, if that's not your position and you're setting out that goal in mind, that's sort of a corrupt goal, and he didn't like that. So I really like him. The letters are very well written and very eloquent. Some of them are pretty boring. Like, there's not a lot of like really exciting letters in there. But like, he is also known for vetoing everything. There's a great letter, which is famous, where he is vetoing a bill that Congress has passed to provide drought relief to some farmers. And he's like, look, I feel sorry for the farmers. I want the farmers to do well, but it's not the job of the federal government to bail out individual citizens who are having a hard time. It's not in the Constitution. It's an irresponsible use of taxpayer funds. We're not going to do it. And that's one of his more well-known vetoes and one of his well-known letters. So there's a lot of stuff like that in there. He's an interesting guy in general. He was married to a much younger woman in the White House. He was like, I think, the first president to get married while in office. And his wife, Frances Cleveland, was highly beloved by the nation. She was the nation's sweetheart. And there was a whole big festivity about her when they married. And their child, Ruth Cleveland, was the inspiration for the candy bar Baby Ruth, which is not named after Babe Ruth, the baseball player. It's named after Baby Ruth Cleveland. Cleveland Heights, the neighborhood in D.C. where I live, is named after Cleveland, but the city of Cleveland is not named after him. That comes from a different origin. Just an all-around interesting guy. He had a secret surgery. He had kind of oral cancer, and he had a problem with, he had to have part of his jaw removed. So he did it on like a riverboat offshore in secret so that the public wouldn't be alarmed and aware that the president was having difficulties. And you know, that the people wrote a whole book about that. That's an interesting fact about his life. I just find there's a lot of cool stuff about him. This book, compilation of his letters, was actually compiled in 1892, which is before he was elected for his second term. He was elected for his first term in 1884, and he was lost the 1888 election, and he was elected for his second term in 1892. So this is only this book only covers his first term and then his time as governor and mayor. So I don't really know what his second term was like as much. But I found it was interesting, and I thought it was worth the time to talk about Grover Cleveland because I just think he's a very underrated president. People don't know him. There's this whole swath of kind of late 19th century presidents, kind of after Lincoln and before FDR. Before Teddy Roosevelt, who people don't really know about, and they're considered to be mediocre. But it's because they didn't get into any trouble. You know, Cleveland was against entangling alliances, as George Washington called them in his farewell address. He was against kind of getting involved in foreign affairs. He didn't want to involve the U.S. taxpayer or the U.S. military in other people's business. Kind of a stay-at-home guy. And, you know, my understanding is there was an economic panic right at the beginning of Cleveland's second term, and he helped kind of correct that by getting the dollar back off of silver and onto gold. And so, responsible statesman and all-around stand-up guy. Now, I'm a little bit torn. I'm a little bit of two minds. If I can go on a little bit of a digression, if you'll forgive me for that. Being an anarchist who believes that political authority is illegitimate and that these people who want to be president are largely bad people who are power hungry and who want to tell other people how to live their lives, not having a lot of respect for them, I think it's sort of a good thing that that perception is being confirmed by our recent crop of presidential candidates who are clearly not respectable or people deserving of respect. I think that's kind of a good thing because it wakes up the population to seeing, oh, these are not noble, you know, great heroes of leadership. They're actually just clowns. I think that's kind of good. I'm in favor of that. But on the other hand, it's pretty embarrassing. And when you read especially if you're an American traveling abroad, which I will be later this year, have other people look at your country and be like, wow, your country's embarrassing. So that's a shame. But, you know, you go back and you read these letters of 19th century statesmen, and they're so dignified and they're so eloquent. It kind of makes you long for that and say, man, I wish our politicians were like that. But I don't really wish our politicians were like that because I don't think our politicians are worthy of that respect that that kind of behavior confers upon them. And so it's sort of more appropriate for them to be revealed as what they really are. But enough of that. I'm sorry to go on a political diatribe here. I try not to do that on this channel, but because we're talking about presidents, I can't really help it. Overall, the letters of Grover Cleveland, it's fairly dry reading, and it's really only worth reading if you are interested in U.S. history or presidential history. But as I am interested in this man in particular, and he's my favorite president, I thought it was a lot of fun to read and see what kind of a person he was, what kind of legislative priorities he had, what kind of a leader he was. And it is kind of a little bit inspiring to make you want to, root for people who are going to be champions of, limited government, democracy, anti-corruption, all that kind of stuff, which we just don't see really much anymore. So I enjoyed that. I'd like to know who your favorite presidents are in the comments. Please let me know, because there's a lot of them to choose from. We have quite a few presidents that you could pick. It's a little bit weird that he's considered two presidents instead of one. He's one man, but he was elected two different non-consecutive terms, and so he counts as two presidents. So we actually have one fewer president than we think we have, based on the numbering system. But anyway, let me know what your favorite presidents are in the comments. I'd be interested to hear that. I know there's a wide variety of opinion out there. And let me know if you've heard of Grover Cleveland and what you think of him. And if you enjoyed this video, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, and check back every Wednesday for yet another book review, which I will be bringing you. Until then, I've been your host, Logan Albright. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.